In the 14th century, Shiraz was caught in the crossfire of the Mongol and Timurid invasions, an era of mass slaughter, widespread political instability, and total societal collapse. Literature produced during such profound existential threat usually reflects its traumatized environment, favoring melancholia or nihilism. Analysis reveals a mathematical anomaly. Isolating emotions across 495 ghazals, only 40 reflect deep suffering, while 137 are highly positive. This yields a 3.4 ratio. In positive psychology, a 3-to-1 ratio is the clinical threshold for human resilience. Hafez breaks past this marker. Maintaining this specific ratio throughout a lifetime of war indicates a highly developed cognitive defense mechanism. The consistent mathematics of his poetry point to a sophisticated cognitive framework operating centuries before the advent of modern metrics. Hafez's text operates as a rigorous map of the human psyche, aligning with 20th century neuropsychological theories. Recurring figures like the ascetic and the spiritual guide represent the internal components of the mind as they attempt to assemble into a functional whole. This blueprint tracks an evolutionary path, beginning with baseline unconscious conflicts and resolving in psychological self-mastery. The ultimate architectural achievement of this model is the Rend, the fully integrated human. By reverse engineering the Rend, we can track its construction through Freudian neuroses and Jungian exploration toward the summit of self-actualization. Sigmund Freud modeled the psyche as a permanent battlefield where raw instinct and societal rules struggle for dominance. This matrix maps Freud's structural model directly onto Hafez's literary universe. In the first column, Freud's id, the primitive drive for pleasure, aligns with the karabat, or the tavern. The zahed, or ascetic, functions as a psychological representation of the rigid, pathological superego. By enforcing absolute repression of natural instincts, the zahid generates intense social anxiety and performative hypocrisy. The Rend acts as the mature ego. Guided by the reality principle, the Rend mediates between the demands of raw instinct and the suffocating rigidity of dogma. Hafez maintains this equilibrium through sublimation, taking the anxious libidinal energy of the id and redirecting it into high artistic creation. Where the zahid fractures under pressure, the Rend achieves a stable equilibrium. Carl Jung observed that to grow, the conscious ego must turn inward and confront the vast chaotic collective unconscious. Jung called this process individuation, the integration of the conscious mind with its hidden, shadowed depths. Hafez visualizes individuation as a perilous sea journey through a dark night and terrifying waves, representing the overwhelming scale of the unconscious. When logic reaches a deadlock in this dark ocean, the psyche requires an archetypal intervention. This intervention arrives through the Pir e Mogon, or spiritual guide, the manifestation of the wise old man archetype, providing unconscious intuition. The beloved represents the anima, the unconscious feminine driving force that provides the ego with inspiration and vitality. By navigating the sea and integrating the wisdom of the Pir and the vitality of the beloved, the Rend transforms from a fragmented social actor into a unified self. These psychological dynamics operated within the brutal physical reality of the 14th century, striking parallels with the existential frameworks of Viktor Frankl. Frankl's system, logotherapy, hinges on the will to meaning, the capacity to extract purpose from unavoidable suffering. Hafez utilizes love and spirituality to execute this reframing, where suffering becomes a necessary, humanizing catalyst for growth. This meaning-making process maps to William Glasser's choice theory, which identifies 5 basic psychological needs: survival, love, power, freedom, and fun. While the Zahi relies on external control and dogma, the Rend operates on an internal locus of control. The Rend constructs a quality world, aligning internal mental images of value with external actions, and taking absolute responsibility for their emotional state. Through logotherapy and choice theory, Hafez demonstrates that psychological sovereignty remains an internal choice, even in an era of slaughter. The culmination of this development aligns with Maslow's framework of the self-actualized, fully functioning person. This pyramid maps the poetic elements of Hafez's work onto the ascending hierarchy of needs. The bottom tiers, physiological and safety needs, are met in the karabat, which functions as a zone of psychological security. The middle tiers of belonging and esteem are fulfilled through deep human connection and internal richness rather than societal validation. The realization of the rend caps the pyramid, the ultimate state of realizing one's potential and achieving unity with existence. The rend is the historical precursor to the modern self-actualized human, perfectly balanced in reality and psychologically whole. We see this self-actualized mind reach a peak experience, or flow state, in Ghazal 184. The poem describes angels mixing the clay of humanity with the wine of intuitive awareness, injecting the primitive drives of the id with purpose. The critical moment of psychic integration occurs in the line, "Peace between me and him." This line signifies the end of the war between the conscious and unconscious mind as the internal conflict dissolves. Modern clinical settings apply these poetic structures through an intervention called Hafez therapy. Practitioners use these metaphors for cognitive restructuring, helping patients lower anxiety and break the grip of a rigid superego. Hafez's work provides a structured psychological map that remains a functional tool for cognitive restructuring in modern clinical practice.